we're going to be talking about art, and we're going to be talking about visual art. And by visual art, I mean things such as painting, sculpture, photography. But before I get into that, I want to talk about film. And I'm one of those weird people who think that film is also an art form. Because we're all aware of movies. We watch Hollywood movies, Bollywood movies. And none of us think, when we watch a movie, that a movie is made by one person. We know there are hundreds of people involved. There's a director. Initially, there was a screenwriter, there's actors, actresses, there's a cinematographer, there's a choreographer, there's dancers, there's musicians, there's the composer, like A.R. Rahman, who composed the music. And we accept this. And one reason we accept it is at the end of the movie, we see the credits roll by. We see the credits. We know all the hundreds of people who came together to make this art form that we call a movie. But when it comes to visual art, we don't accept really the idea that more than one person can be involved. We adhere to an idea that's basically a very Western concept, but also Eastern. Both the West and the East have prolonged this idea, which I call the solo genius myth. And that's the myth that there's somebody like Van Gogh who goes off into the field with his brushes and his paints, and he paints a canvas, and then he brings it back and gets into a gallery, and eventually this is sold for millions of dollars after the artist is dead, which artists generally become famous and rich after they're dead, you know. So this myth is very persistent. In India, it translates to people like Ramkinkar Bej of Shantiniketan. And even with artists who are successful, say M.F. Hussain in India, who made a lot of money, or Picasso in the West, who made a lot of money, we like to think of them as solo geniuses. They're creating a work by themselves and presenting it to us. So when we hear in contemporary art circles somebody like Damien Hirst in the UK, you know, who has, you find out that he has literally, I think, 200 assistants at the peak of his career, we somehow think that we're being cheated, that somehow he's cheating, something's going wrong. Or we listen about somebody like Subodh Gupta and somebody tells us, well, he doesn't make his own sculptures, he just comes up with the idea and somebody makes them for him. But this is really wrong. It's a wrong notion, because not only in contemporary art, but throughout the ages, art has been collaborative. So that's what we're going to talk about. This is a book that came out in 2006. I have to go back to the early work, how we met each other, okay? This came out in 2006, and it was my first book. It was called India Poems, The Photographs. And basically it was landscapes, portraits, such as this portrait. This was all chemical process prints, done with my Rolleiflex camera. The prints were made by hand. But in 2006, there was a great change in my life, because I met this man, Rajesh Soni, here in Udaipur. I had been in India 16 years, 8 years at that point. But when I moved here, then we continued on. I've been here 16 years total. But tell your story a little bit about your art before that.
So before meeting Waswo, about me, myself, I was born in Udaipur, and I belong to an artistic family. So from my childhood, I always loved doing art, like painting, drawing, and sketching. And I was as I was grown up, I was thinking I would like to do something with art, but it could not only a piece to show in a house, but it should be giving a message as well. So when I was hanging around in the street, I saw many old buildings were knocking down, and people were destroying, not taking care of, and converting them into modern buildings or hotel or guest house. So then I thought, let's do some work that I can give a message to people, and they can restore their old beauty and they don't destroy it. So in that terms, I started making sketches of huge big size landmarks, as you see Jagdish temple over there, and then you can see Bagor Ki Haveli. And with these big landmarks, if you look at them closer and from more details, you can see lots of beautiful details in it. Like this. And these are, if you look at them with more clear detail, you can see that these are the peacocks, and these are details of the Jarokas. So in the way I start walking in the streets and then looking for the things which were destroyed and thrown out. So I even draw that. to send a message to the people so they can look and they can think that they need to restore this. And in the same time, I met Waswo, and we started working on, and what the interesting thing I like about Waswo was he was giving me a chance to do the hand coloring photographs, because this was done by my grandfather and this art was lost, no one was doing it anymore, and through him I got again a new chance. And here he can explain you some.
He always says that I gave him a chance, and I always feel that he gave me a chance, because after I started working with Rajesh, my career just took off. I was pretty unknown until I started working with Rajesh, and he helped me so much. Through hand coloring the photographs, we've now had exhibitions in Mumbai and Delhi and Kochi and Singapore. This is a show actually in Bangkok. We were releasing our new book, Men of Rajasthan. So this has really taken off. And how it started was I had come to Udaipur and started doing studio photographs like this, and I was shooting digital at this point in black and white. It was going to be a digital series, but Rajesh came along and said, "Chacha, I can paint these." And pretty soon he was hand coloring my black and white photos. This is the first one that we ever hand colored, actually, called Naru with a Ravan Hatha. But very soon we were transforming the images from this to this, from this to this. And there was a great change. These are all very early photographs. It made a tremendous impact in how we approached art, how I approached art, because before that I was very much a black and white purist. You know, I was the sort of person, I wanted to be that solo genius. I wanted to be the solo genius who was just making art of my own. And collaborating with somebody was not really in the picture initially, but once we started working together, it just worked so well.
So here at the picture you can see it's one of the photographs that my grandfather painted. So he was taking photographs of the royal families and middle class people also. And what he was doing was like taking photograph by himself, printing it and then hand coloring it. And that time there was not like color photography. And he was not only taking the photos of like simple portraits, he was also taking photos with the royal family's function and programs around here. And then he was hand coloring this. And then here you can see the ceremony that was happening at the Amma Mata temple here, and the way he painted the photos, where you can see like all different colors in the turban and little details are there. And after that I wanted to do this work continue, but I know that it was difficult to get all chemical prints and all the colors that was available that time. So I come up with new ideas with Waswo, and I start hand coloring those photos on digital paper with fine art colors and Vincent and Whiten colors.
Rajesh had quite a transition in learning hand to hand color the digital prints. In fact, at first we weren't quite sure if he could actually do that, and I had to do a lot of research to find out if a digital print was actually paintable. It turned out that they were. The difference being an old silver gelatin print had a coating that needed oil paint, whereas a digital print you needed to use a watercolor. But anyway, after many years we were honored with this too, with an exhibition at City Palace here in Udaipur, in which Rajesh's grandfather Prabhu Lal's work was shown along with our work, and it took up 3 different rooms in the City Palace Museum. So continuing with this whole idea of collaboration, so now you know basically what we do and how this started. And when you look at a photograph like this, which is called the Hookah Man, you know that there's 2 artists involved. There's Waswo X Waswo and there's Rajesh Soni, the hand colorist. But there's actually more than that, because when you're talking about collaboration, you look here, there's also the model. The model is a form of collaborator. The model has his own talent. He goes to the gym. He keeps in good condition. The model performs as a sort of actor. He has to know how to strike a pose and hold that pose. Modeling isn't easy. Some people think modeling is some cushy job, but it isn't. There's also the backdrop painter. The backdrops fly over people's heads, so there's somebody painting the backdrops. This person is Anil Atrish, and he's actually in my old studio, which was in Ambavgar Hill, and he is painting this backdrop similar to the one you just saw on the Hookah Man. Now, even the backdrop workers work in teams. Anil works with his sister Indu, and Anil and Indu work together painting the backdrops. My other backdrop painter, Zanul Khan, has a whole team of artists that he works with in painting. Here we are out in the fields near my new village in Varda, and we're shooting actually in the wheat fields, and as you can see how many people are involved stretching the painted linen backdrop over a wooden frame to make a photograph, and the photograph turns out to be this one, which we call April Harvest, and this actually became the cover of the new book, Men of Rajasthan, that just came out last November. So when you talk about collaboration, there's a lot of people coming into this. I want to go back. These two guys, this is Ganpat Mali, who's here today, Jay Prakash Chaparwal. They've been my assistants here in Udaipur for 9 years. And tremendous amount of work these guys do. So you can think of them in ways as like the prop stylists when you're shooting a movie. They're the ones who find the props, get the props in the right position. They adjust the lighting for me. They do a lot. So when you get into this whole, what I call the myth of the solo genius, right, I have to go in the right direction. The myth of the solo genius, you look at a photograph like this, which is called The Village Barber. Well, there's so many different people who have interacted, not just Rajesh and I, to make this photograph a reality. And the whole thing, I think the reason why people have difficulty with collaboration in the art as opposed to movie or the idea of groups of people working on an artistic project is generally because there's no credits that roll. You know, in the movie you see that roll of credits and you're aware of all the people who work in making this project, whereas artists still want to present themselves as the solo genius. You know, they want to present themselves as, I am the artist, you know, and they tend to shove everybody else in the background. So we've been very conscious about always wanting to take joint credit for things. When we exhibit, I generally sign the front of the photographs, Rajesh signs the back. We're always listed as the photo is by Waswo X Waswo, and it's been hand-colored by Rajesh Soni. He's given an equal billing in that manner. But it does become an ethical issue, such as, should we credit the backdrop painter? Now here's a beautiful backdrop, which was done by Zainul Khan, and this is a photograph called The Picnic. Should we credit the backdrop painter? Well, we do. We credit him in catalogs and in books, whatever, but he doesn't sign the photograph because we don't think he's that personally involved, whereas Rajesh is so intensely involved in this project, and he approaches coloring each photo like an artist, like he is. I mean, he has incredible sensitivity in coloring. So let's end this up. The whole idea of collaboration in the arts, you know, we tend to think it's a new thing and it's something that has come along with contemporary art, but I just want to go back, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but I want to go back to the tradition of miniature painting. You know, if you look at miniature painting, the border painters of a miniature were seldom given credit. When you talk about the masters of miniature painting, many times those masters of miniature painting, they only came in at the end to finish the faces of the royal families or the people. They only came at the end to paint the robes and the hands that were considered very difficult to paint. And many times it was others, it was assistants or apprentices who were actually painting the borders, maybe the backgrounds, maybe even the trees, and yet the finished miniature was credited to such and such a miniaturist. So the whole idea of collaboration it's not a new idea, but I think that what is a new idea is giving the credit in some way.
That's
and you know, this presentation is not so much to present solutions, but it's to ask questions. Yeah. And we really want people to think about how should art be credited, how should visual art be credited when there's more than one artist involved, because there really are, more and more in this world, very few solo geniuses. More and more people work in collaborative teams to make art. There's a lot of back and forth between curators and artists. Curators put pressure on artists to do certain things for certain shows. So just exactly how does the solo genius myth, and I like to call it a myth, how does that myth really fit into this current scenario? So I could go on. I still have time left. I was worried I'd run out of time. But I have plenty of time left. But I think we pretty much covered the bases. Is there anything else you want to say?
No.
No?
Yeah.
Yeah?
That's fine.
Okay, okay, we end it. Thank you.
Yeah.